Charmed Life Therapy, powerfully and subconsciously changing your life. Hi, it's Anne-Marie from Charmed Life Therapy. Back with, I don't even know if it's an update today about the Blake Lively It Ends With Us saga drama. Because it's again been another of those periods where I feel called not to comment on things, because again, where there's been a lot of backwards and forwards on the docket and just a lot of nonsense and BS, as we're supposed to say, rather than the full thing. But I probably will be pulled to swear today just because it's also very annoying. So the celebratory part obviously is that, well, is it celebratory? The fact that Perez has she's withdrawn her subpoena, hasn't she, in Las Vegas? Blake has withdrawn her subpoena against Perez Hilton. So obviously that's good news for him. But again, it's that sense of dissatisfaction, isn't it, that the content creators experienced of she withdraws these things before she has to truly prove the argument or truly let on the scope of the lack of a case she has. In effect, I mean, her excuse for doing it this time is that she has what she needs via Wayfarer, and of course she took the opportunity to make pointed little arguments about, she finally got these 80,000 pages or whatever it was from Wayfarer, and it's always alluding to how bad Wayfarer is and how good she is, and how she's only doing things the right way and all of this. There's always instances of where she gets the opportunity to put this thing in. And I honestly think she won't have got anything from those 80,000 pages that will implicate Perez or tie Perez to any kind of untraceable smear campaign. I don't think that will exist. I think she'll have got whatever bit that was there that actually is nothing more than normal relations between people in the media and PR people that anybody would be doing. I don't think there will be, this smoking gun or whatever it is. So she caused all of that and all of that upset to Perez, all again unnecessarily, when she could have just kept targeting Wayfarer and kept pushing and pushing for their missing documents, which she did in the end anyway. So it begs the question, why did she do that to Perez in Las Vegas? And that's when you can only think it's retaliation. It's trying to make it incredibly difficult for people, trying to put them off making derogatory videos anymore, which is exactly what she did to the other content creators too. She put them on notice, watch your backs kind of thing. You don't know what's coming. It's that kind of feeling. And I think this is why sometimes I struggle to comment on all of this, because I think, should I be propagating it and adding to the wealth of content there is out there about it? It's not good news in any sense. Much of the time it's entirely frustrating. And I think right now as well, when you've got all the discourse happening about Charlie Kirk and what happened to him, and about Irina from the Ukraine and her murder, it puts things like this case into stark relief, and it also highlights a lot of the problems that we have going on, whereby we think things that happen to people whose opinion we might disagree with, that they were in some way asking for that or deserve it, or that's the way to win the argument, is for violence to happen to somebody and then to go and glory in it as well. I mean, we're seeing now, many people being fired for it and things like that. And even the firings, it won't change people with those kind of arguments. It just adds to their sense of victimization. It doesn't solve the problem. They could have done really with scooping them all up and putting them in some kind of training about what it is to be a human being, and have empathy and be open-minded and all of the rest of it. That it's just entirely frustrating. So I guess why I haven't been commenting here is, for a few days I've been down a little bit of a rabbit hole. Because sometimes what I find as a repercussion of me coming out of school at 12 with school phobia is that often I feel like I walk around in the world in quite a naive kind of way. And I question myself, am I easily swayed? Am I, not gullible's the wrong word, but impressionable, I guess. So the death of Charlie Kirk kind of made me, because it's like I said, it's only really over the last year or so, and I'm not a political animal at all, but for some reason Candice and Candice Owens, kept popping up on my feed, and I found myself quite interested in what they had to say, and it was quite refreshing, I felt, in a way, because it kind of aligns with the beliefs I grew up with, being Catholic in many ways. And it also raised interesting questions in me about my own feelings about the trans issue and non-binary and all kinds of things. So when Charlie has been murdered and people were saying, you know, how horrific a person he was in some instances and that he engendered hate and all of these kind of things. I guess for the last couple of days I've been watching maybe a bit more content, but I still haven't seen anything that indicates to me Charlie Kirk being hateful. So anyway, all of this has been going on in my head, and I guess that's partly why tackling the Blake Lively thing has just seemed entirely pointless and ridiculous, and the fact there's so much going on and actually nothing really happening. Because we've got the Taylor Swift of it all, haven't we? And I think we start feeling, you know, like when the whole, oh, Taylor's going to be deposed in October now, and people were saying that before actually waiting for the judge to decide on whether he would even allow that. It's like, oh yeah, Taylor's going to testify on Justin's behalf. And it's like, I just thought, no, she's not. She's not going to testify on Justin's behalf because we know she doesn't want to be a part of this thing. So just because they've mooted a date in October and we've got all excited and all the rest of it, it doesn't mean it will happen. And it doesn't mean she will say what we want her to say, because she is always going to be Team Taylor first and foremost, because she's a brand to protect. And as I've said before, I feel like the only input she's had in It Ends With Us is the odd thing she might have agreed with Blake, where Blake's, you know, either emailed her something, texted her something, or she happened to be in the same city as her at the same time and they met up, where she might have run something by her and Taylor's just been a good friend and said, oh yeah, that's a great idea, and but yeah, you should put it to him. Whatever it is, I think it's as cavalier and just as off the cuff as that. I don't think it's anything with any intensity. Obviously she agreed to let them use My Tea as Ricochet, and there was all that discourse, wasn't there, over Taylor insisted that the original composer must be fired in order to be able to use My Tea as Ricochet. But was that all just bull dust? You know, and where was that coming from? Who was saying that? All of that time that Blake was spouting Taylor's name like an epiphany all over the promotion of that movie, that was really, in my personal opinion, just like a two-pronged attack. You watch me forget the second prong by the time I've told you the first prong. I might have even forgotten the first prong. But it's like a threat. Yeah, I'll say it, a threat. It was both a threat and a protective device, throwing Taylor's name around as she did. Because A, and I say A and then I'll probably forget B and C, because she knew Taylor is not going to come out and agree to it, because Taylor doesn't really publicly comment on a lot. So she felt fairly confident, did Blake, saying this nonsense, because there would have been a shade of tiny bit of truth to it. And she knows Taylor is not going to come out and publicly say, Blake Lively's chuffing lying, I had nothing to do with this. So she felt fairly safe and confident in doing that. She may feel like she's the kind of friend, and I imagine this is fairly true as well, who kind of tends to get her way with Taylor. You know, if she couches it in a certain way, Taylor's somebody who likes to do things for people if it's not a problem to her. So I assume that she's quite facilitated much of Blake's needs in terms of this friendship. So And we don't even really know how much of it Taylor was seeing at the time, whether she knew how often this was happening, that her name was being bandied about in this way. But for Blake, it was about attack and defense. I think it was covering all of her bases. It was sending like a message to Justin: you can't combat this. It's like us Capricorns when we say you can't beat us because we've got Jesus and Denzel Washington. You know, that are Capricorns. Blake was kind of going, I've got Taylor Swift, that you're not going to be able to beat Taylor Swift in the public perception. Nobody's ever going to believe you over me when I have Taylor Swift. When Taylor Swift is my friend, Taylor Swift helps me with my projects. Taylor Swift is instrumental in my life. It was kind of like both a defense in that she had this powerful person in her life who doesn't publicly comment on a lot of things and doesn't stir up an argument where there doesn't need to be an argument, really. And it allowed all of those narratives to be going on, whereby somebody else was the shit stirrer and not Blake, because for a while there, she was actually managing to make it look like Taylor was the shit stirrer in all of this. So she was using Taylor Swift in all forms of different ways, like as a controlling measure over Justin as well. I think when she first the only person I've really been listening to in the last couple of days, content-wise, that's to do with this is not actually Golden, because I've got the sense she's as equally frustrated with it, and with the lawyers in essence, as I am, really, because she was trying to figure out at what point did Blake bring Taylor into this equation, because she's made a big to-do of how, and this is the frustration for me, is that even now at this point in time, when the whole world knows that Taylor Swift isn't having anything to do with her, that they are not friends, that if Taylor Swift truly believed she'd been essayed or harassed on that set, she would have Taylor Swift's vocal support or even financial support, as we saw with Kesha. So, but even at this point in her documents, Blake is saying, how dare you target this powerful woman, Taylor Swift, who's busy, who's this, who's that, who's the other, who's this, important figure to so many people. How dare you try and tear her down as part of your narrative and what have you. Meanwhile, ignoring the fact it was her that brought her into it unnecessarily. And part of this, I think, it's kind of like how Blake let go her emotional distress claims. It's like, and part of this is the attorney's problem as well, and we don't really know with the attorneys whether they find her incredibly hard to deal with and reason with, and Ryan, which I imagine so, but there's also the thing of they're an incredible cash cow, aren't they? And the longer it goes on, the more money is generated. But it's like, it seems early on that Blake chose to be blissfully in her own head about certain things that would or wouldn't have to happen as a result of the actions that she took. Because she really didn't think she would have to produce her medical records as any kind of claim over the forms of upset the distress that she's experienced. Now, surely a lawyer, quite early days, would have explained to her that that was the case, that you can't just say these things without having to prove them. So did they explain that to her, and did she just refuse to take it on board? Because I feel like the Taylor Swift thing is a similar thing. She thought she could wield Taylor Swift simply for her own purposes, and that they wouldn't get to question her or get to use anything that she said or get to depose her or whatever it is. She seemed to have this really blinkered thing, despite what advice she must be having to be getting. Surely she is getting it, otherwise the lawyers are extremely at fault. But it's like both situations seem to be, she thought she could solely use it for her purposes and nobody would question it. And I think that is the thing with Blake, what I've kept going back to, is that if she's raised to believe that only her perspective counts, only her needs count, her needs have to be met, and it goes without question, then yes, that's exactly what she's still doing. She still is, there's still only like one side of her brain that's working, and it's the side where nobody else gets to say or do anything against her. It's vastly unfair and all of the rest of it. So yeah, people were getting all excited over Taylor's going to be deposed in October, and straight away I thought, well, why on earth is the judge ever going to agree to that way after the close of depositions? And once again, the frustration was, and the question becomes, why a Wayfarer, or more accurately Liner Freedman, why do Liner Freedman keep making these mistakes, if indeed they are mistakes? Or is it tactics? Either way, it's entirely frustrating to us watching it, because they're not stupid people. So why are they doing stupid things, or what is perceived to be stupid? And why have they not learned by now how this judge functions and what he needs in terms of being able to swing anything in their direction? Because they continue, whenever Blake says something, they continue to just dispute it without including an argument, without including any case references or citations. So of course the judge doesn't pass it, because he's demonstrated time and time again that he's not interested in making up his own emotional mind about it, or what it feels like, or what it might lead to. He wants a case, he wants an argument, he wants emotion, he wants citations. He's very black and white, he's very logical. If you don't spell it out to him, he's not interested. So again, they did this thing where they disputed Blake having 10 extra days to hold depositions, and her team made a valid argument as to why she needed extra time because of them doing the document dump on her. And them turning around, Wayfarer turning around and saying, well, that's what she asked for, and she was aware of it, and she knew those depositions were coming. It's just not good enough. It's not good enough for the judge, and at this point, it's not good enough for me either, because they should know how that judge works at this point. You know, you can think he's biased or not biased. At this moment in time, I don't think he is. I've always sat on the fence a bit about it. And I think he just does not like the style in which Liner Freedman are coming about this case. Because whether it's the fact that Liner Freedman are more tailoring it to us, the public, I do not know. And I kind of get the sense, as I said before, and I was quite happy the other day, because the other day in my video, I did say, I don't think Wayfarer is bothered about deposing Taylor Swift, because if she was so important, if she was so crucial, they would have done it long since. They wouldn't have it hanging over them. They wouldn't have cancelled it in the first place like they did last time, withdrew the subpoena or whatever it was, and said they had what they needed, which they did, and then tried to have it way too late. They wouldn't have only given her a couple of days to figure out when they could do this deposition with her. So my feeling, like last time I made the video, was, do they even need Taylor? Is this just more like a direct message to Blake that we're not afraid of going there and you clearly are? And that was just my gut feeling, my gut instinct about it. So I was really pleased when I saw Not Actually Golden do a video, and from the highly educated legal brain perspective of it, say exactly the same thing, more or less. If she was that important, they'd have done something about it before. It feels more like a message. She pretty much said a very similar thing just from her perspective, which was really good for me, because many of these videos, obviously when I'm talking to you, I might be reading the docket and the documents and stuff like that, but I can't always accurately analyse them or get the subtext, but I'll have a feeling about the instinct, about motivations, about where it's going, about what might be a bit of strategy or something like that. I will get a feeling, an intuition about it. So that's kind of what I brought to you. And I still think that, really, if she was that important, Taylor Swift, to this argument, they would have sorted it out by now. They'd have had all of the ducks in a row. So what has this all been about? Is it media strategy, PR strategy? I think there's still an off chance they might get to depose if they can sneak it in before the deadline somehow. And the thing is, we don't know what's going on in Taylor's head or in the head of Taylor's lawyer. Because they will say that thing to the public, to the docket, where it's out there like that. And I truly feel she doesn't want to have to deal with either of them, which is a frustration to me personally, because I think my emotional feeling, which counts for nothing really in this circumstance, is that if she truly believes and has information that there's no way Blake has really been SH, she might have had a feeling about something, but was she truly SH'd or any of it? And all of the things that she's very well aware by now that Blake has done, you know, why isn't she leaning a bit more towards Justin Baldoni? Why isn't she being a little bit helpful? And what we're seeing in the public is that she's not interested in either. She's not interested in the argument. She's not interested in helping either side. She doesn't feel like she has anything to offer. But in truth, that's just the public-facing thing, isn't it? We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and it's almost not worth talking about it in a way, because it's just a load of nonsense. It's just pure conjecture that we would be doing. So I guess that's why I've not really been pulled to talk about it very much. And I feel like with Wayfarer or Liner Freedman, to be seen to be doing such silly things and to still be letting Blake's legal team just sometimes walk all over them, or that's what it looks like if there's no undercurrent that we're not quite sure about. But I do feel like they're so sure on the path that they're on that Blake has no case, basically. And I think the more we see how she withdraws subpoenas, how she claims to have got it elsewhere, how she's not coming up with anything new, she's not proving her case. It bandies from one thing to the next, as we've said before. If this argument is working, suddenly it's Brian Freedman to blame. If Brian Freedman's not getting what they need, suddenly it's the Skyline agency and the website that is the problem. You know, when Jed wasn't working, it pivoted to something else. So I do feel like they're just sat there biding the time, Wayfarer, and maybe that's why they're not so bothered about being perceived to be making cock-ups in public. Maybe they're just giving her as much leeway to hang herself, basically. They're kind of allowing a situation where she gets so much information, so much stuff, and if at that point she still can't make a case out of it, it's like a slam dunk, isn't it? There's no coming back from it. There's no appeal. And that might be the thing. If everything is allowed to her and still nothing comes of it, she's got no grounds for an appeal should she lose, or should a judgment go against her, or whatever it is. So other than that, we've kind of, I mean, this is the other thing that was weird. This whole argument as to, you know, the privilege logs and such, where they've had to give over more communications because the judge ruled that just because you copy in Liner Freedman on something between Jed and Justin and Melissa and whoever, it doesn't make it a legal argument. It doesn't make it attorney-client privileged. And it's like they allowed that to be ruled on and all of that, and to lose that motion or have it granted in part, denied in part. It might have been that one. But then they turn around and go, well, actually, Jed was represented by us and has continued to be so even since he got his own representation. We've never not represented him either. So actually, some of those are attorney-client privilege. And you think, hang on, isn't this an argument you should have made before you got ruled against, because you were well aware of it? And again, the argument they make is that Blake's side surely knew that they were well aware that we were representing Jed Wallace at that point. And again, it's like, but the judge is not going to take that argument. He's going to say, you knew, and you never brought it up, because that is what is continuously done in the past, the judge, and I've commented on it before. When they go, so-and-so could have done this, and the other side's argument is, yeah, but you could have done this, and the other side goes, yeah, but you should have known. the judge always goes on like the lively side, on the plaintiff side, or the Jones side, or whatever it is, because they're saying you knew what was happening, you had equal culpability, you could have pointed it out, you could have raised an objection, you didn't, so they get to have what they get to have. And that's the danger here as well. So at the moment, there's like a bit of a temporary hold on some of Brianna Koslow and Katie Case's responses while they figure out now that Wayfarer and team have to provide a brand new privilege log that explains how them being counsel for Jed Wallace as well somehow gives them attorney-client privilege over some of those communications. And Case and Koslow are going, we don't really object, because at this point we thought we had to give all of this over. We've collated it, we've got it, whatever it is. And now it's like, Judge, can we have a ruling? Because now we don't know what to do, because suddenly they're saying Jed Wallace is their client too. And it's like, and I think that was my frustration, because obviously this is my team. And my team are really winding me up. Because it's like, no, at this point, you know how this judge works. You know what he wants. You know what he expects you to do. You should have been learning all along. So is the fact that to all intents and purposes, they are making it look like they aren't learning anything, is that a strategy in itself? Are they doing it for a reason? Are they doing it as a wind-up? Are they doing it to try and frustrate Blake into something? Are they doing it so it literally looks like they've got everything they ever wanted or needed and still couldn't bring a case? Are they delaying? Are they just having fun at this point? But it's not very fun to watch, I don't think, from this perspective. And I've kind of been frustrated with the content creators a bit the last few days, because just swinging from one way to the other just as every tiny bit of information comes up, it's not really helpful, is it? I didn't want to come out and make a video about, yay, we've got Taylor Swift on our side, and yeah, she's going to say exactly what we want, and it's going to be this, and it's going to be amazing. And you know, what was the point in that? Because you knew that like the next day or 2 days later the story would be entirely different. So that's where we're at, basically. So yay for Perez, but also it's a little bit disappointing in some ways as well, because again, it gives her the leeway to say, oh, I had to fight so hard just to get the truth. It gives her that narrative. And anything that feeds Blake's ego or Blake's narrative is not a good thing. It elongates this case. It's a bit sad in a way, because it allows her to continue to be deluded about the way this case is going. So yeah, I get all weird mixed feelings about it, because I do feel like there's, for all she has everything you could ever want, a husband, which, well, I won't give him house room, but she does. She's got she's got 4 beautiful children. She could walk away tomorrow and still have a successful life. But there's something about her that makes me feel very sad about the mindset she has to live with, and the fact that she will always be very vulnerable while ever she can't cope with somebody else having a valid argument that is not the same as hers. You know, she will walk through her life feeling incredibly vulnerable, feeling like the world is out to get her in some ways, or that she needs rescuing or whatever it is. So yeah, I haven't feel pulled to just jump on and go with like the different narrative each day as each document has come through and all of the rest of it. I am kind of ready for it to be resolved at this point. I'm ready for Discovery to be over. I'm kind of glad in a way that it doesn't get to extend to October for like just taking depositions. So whether they manage to get a sneaky deposition in before the deposition window closes now, I don't know. We'll just have to see. But it's like, it was no point jumping in and saying, oh, the judge denied them the opportunity to depose Taylor Swift, and it's so unfair, it's so this, so that, or the other, because that's not really how it went. The judge is like, no, the close of the close of deposition, if you needed to just depose one person in October, way after the fact, then you needed to have a really valid argument as to why, when you've had all of this time to do it and you let go of the opportunity to do it before. And the thing is, you have to come down on the side of the judge. You have to say he's right in what he's saying. There's no real argument about it. And you have to think that Wayfarer haven't bothered and haven't been on it because they haven't really needed to. They have like communications. So what else do they need really? I think like if they really needed to have Taylor Swift, they'd have really gone after it voraciously. So you have to ask yourself, why didn't they need it? And that might be all we need to know really. And everything else isn't worth really speculating on or worrying about, especially, like I say, in the current times when there's much bigger and more important discussions that need to be happening, because some of the things I've seen in the Charlie Kirk videos have been, really quite depressing and scary, really. And some of the arguments that he had, or the debates he had with campus students, when you saw how people had these very virulent arguments but couldn't back them up with any kind of fact or logic, and they were literally just reliant on phones and reading it off the phone, and it makes you really start worrying about how indoctrinated our youth is, that they can't make up an argument on their own or see things from both sides, like Blake Lively. Are we actually raising a generation of Blake Livelies? And what a dangerous scenario is that that's the future of the world and the rest of it, that they're kind of dissociated from the truth in so many ways, and they are so indoctrinated in just one sense, one perspective, one narrative. So really the Blake Lively thing has not necessarily felt that important to me, and I've been quite upset. I have been quite sad about it all, because whether you liked him or not, it's a tragic loss of life. And he was only 31 years old. He was a baby in all senses, really. He's a baby. 31 years old is no age at all, and 2 young children. So that's my perspective on it, and I know it won't be popular with everybody, but that's my feeling about it. If we can't have sympathy for the loss of him, for his family and what it means to everybody that did love him. And like I say, I have not seen anything online so far that I think constitutes hate or trying to incite something. His whole perspective seemed to be, he would have listened to anybody's argument if they had a justification for it. The problem was that most of the time they couldn't justify the arguments they had. Even like some of the professors that are teaching the next generation couldn't justify their arguments, and that is very worrying. So yeah, that's my thoughts for today. Please do hit that like and subscribe and share if you enjoy these little ramblings. Drop me a comment and I will try and get back to you if I can. I try to keep across these things because I like chatting to you. And don't forget, you can listen to my free audiobook as well if you want an entire change of subject and just to listen to a funny romance novel. You can look for Flora and the Homeless Gigolo here on my channel. And just listen to that chapter by chapter if you like listening to the sound of my voice. It's quite funny when people say they like listening to my voice, or they hear my voice in their head. If they're one of my hypnotherapy clients, it quite tickles me. But there you go. All right, so I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. Drop a like and subscribe, and please check out the description box. There's often free resources there.